Welcome to Shovick Sports Shit Podcast. We're just two brothers who just talk sports and give our opinions on today's topics. This is for entertainment purposes only, and these are strictly our opinions and views. So sit back for the next hour and enjoy our sports takes. Right, welcome back to another episode of Shovick's Sports Shit. I'm Cory.
And I'm Austin.
And let's jump right into it. We got a lot to cover. We won't worry too much about the hits tonight. We'll kind of just roll right into kind of the coaching moves that have came about. So we know Patriots went Mike Vrabel, Jets went Aaron Glenn, Jaguars went Liam Cohen, Bears did Ben Johnson, Raiders Pete Carroll, Cowboys Brian Schottenheimer, and I think all signs are pointing to the Saints going Kellen Moore. So we talked, 2 or 3 weeks ago when we first were kind of diving into predictions for where coaches were going to go, what jobs kind of ranked, and we kind of pointed towards the Raiders and Saints as possibly being the bottom parts. Saints are at least taking their time. I mean, it sucks that Cliff Kingsbury, Mike McCarthy, and some of the other guys kind of took their names out rather quickly for the Saints job. But then, the Cowboys decided that they were going to go ahead and just blow by everybody with their hire. I like all the hires so far between the Patriots, Jets, Jaguars, Bears, and Raiders. Weirdly enough, I think the Raiders actually had one of the better hires of the Saints, Cowboys, and themselves, obviously, with Pete Carroll. I can confidently say Pete Carroll is better than Brian Schottenheimer, and I can confidently say Pete Carroll is going to be better than whoever the Saints get. What are your thoughts? And then kind of give us your breakdown of the worst hire in the cycle.
Yeah, so, I think we've established our agreed upon hatred for the Raiders, but I think this is the first sign of intelligence from them for a long time. I don't think this was necessarily a hire to think that they'll be in a Super Bowl or even like in a really great top tier position after 3 years. What I think this is somebody who's going to come in and kind of just reset that locker room, get that foundation laid, like just show how things are supposed to work there. I don't know how much Pete has left in the tank, truth be told. I didn't know if he'd come back or not. Dude's already like 130. But I think this is just a really good move for the Raiders to just get someone in there who knows how to just run a team, run a locker room, show signs of life. So I do think they knocked it out of the park with it. It still doesn't make me really terrified of the Raiders, just because I don't think this is as much of a win, a hire that's going to win you a lot of games. I think this is a hire to just get the organization back on track, which honestly, that needed to be the first step, right? Like we talk about the Cowboys, their first step is to do the same thing, but that's never going to happen with Jerry Jones in the building. He's just going to continuously derail everything. So for the Raiders to realize that and knock that hire out of the park, it's a really good first step for them. I don't think they're going to have the turnaround that Denver did, right? Like, I don't think they're immediately going to be a 10-win team, but having Pete's going to give you a couple extra wins, a few more competitive games, and it's going to make you look more functional. I think right now the worst hire is obviously Schottenheimer. If Kellen Moore really does go to the Saints, I might do that one. I think I mentioned before, I don't think the Saints is actually a very good job to take, just given their age and salary cap hell and everything else. So it may not be that he's the worst coach. I think he's just going to have the steepest hill to climb. But I think right now it's Schottenheimer. Like, you're the Cowboys. How the fuck do you do this? And I think my favorite comparison that I even read to you was like the Cowboys swinging and missing and hiring Brian Schottenheimer was the same thing as them not calling and offering Derrick Henry and signing Zeke. Like, you went with the in-house off-brand what the fuck move instead of even attempting to do anything. So, Schottenheimer has some good DNA going for him. I got to be honest, I didn't even see this guy as a head coaching candidate, so I don't know a whole lot about him beside his name, and that Dallas hired him. Pull for these random guys, it's probably just a dude Jerry Jones was like, oh, he's my little puppet, I want to hire him type deal. So I don't know what to expect, honestly, but when you're the Cowboys and you walk away from a fucking coaching cycle like this that had names and you walk away with this one, I don't know, Cowboys are going to cowboy, and I think this is just another beginning to them cowboying into this offseason. So it's just really weird to me. Other than that, I think all the other coaching hires I thought were really good. Ben Johnson to the Bears, everyone thought of that was kind of a marriage before anything even happened. So Liam Cohen, I liked that before some of his interviews and press conferences. I'm nothing against him, but the dude's got to have the least amount of swag. But hell, if you can win games, that's all that matters. So I think it was a really good coaching cycle for everyone but the Cowboys and potentially Saints.
Yeah, I would still put Kellen Moore ahead of Schottenheimer if that is where they're going. Because even Kellen Moore's been a head coaching candidate the last couple of years. Outside of the year, I think he was fired or let go or mutually parted ways. But either way, he's still been a candidate for a head coaching position.
Is the position the Saints are in, right? I just feel like it needed to be a very veteran head coach because I think you're going to have a lot of turnover, a lot of rebuild, and a first-time head coach. That just seems like a steep hill. I thought a McCarthy hire made sense. The veteran, probably been through this a time or two. So it's nothing against Kellen Moore. I just think the situation for a first-time head coach is going to be extremely rough.
Yeah, but now you got to look. This would be McCarthy's third head coaching job, so he's taking the cycle off. I mean, you're not even guaranteed that you're going to be in demand next year, especially with the likes of Robert Saleh, some of those guys that went coordinator positions instead. Spags could have another good season with the Chiefs defense, and then maybe he gets a shot. Vance Joseph with Denver, those guys had interviews this cycle. They just weren't picked. So I have a hard time thinking some coaches can get away with taking the year off. Pete Carroll, Sean Payton, those kinds of coaches. You're looking at a guy who
is McCarthy that level?
Well, and I would say no. I would, but I'm not as confident saying no on that. He is still a good coach, either way you look at it. I mean, it could be. I mean, they could still have Jason Garrett, right? It could be way worse. We saw what happened when he went out. No one's giving him. We're not calling Jason Garrett. So I still have a hard time thinking that he gets something next cycle, just based on you're going to have the young hot candidates like usual, coordinator wise, but then you have Robert Saleh, some of those guys that are going to be out there. Yeah, it smart on his part, maybe, but I'm not sure if I'd be willing to take that chance because you think if you're not in it next year, Saints probably would have been better than nothing. So, yeah, as far as the Cowboys go, I heard Jerry's press conference and what he was saying about he hasn't gotten to where he's at without taking shots. I mean, come on, this is not just a shot. This is, again, man, at this rate, you should have just kept McCarthy, right?
He hasn't gotten anywhere since the 90s. I don't know. I mean, just rich old white dude, I guess. He had a nice little stretch in the 90s and then has literally swung and missed ever since.
I'm going to take the OC from the guy I just fired, and he's going to be the head coach.
Yeah,
I get it. McCarthy's contract was up, and McCarthy probably wasn't going to resign there no matter what you tried to offer him. But come on, man. You claim to be the Cowboys. Now you got Michael Irvin, Troy Aikman coming out and saying, hey, this isn't quite the job it, used to be. This isn't a coveted job. No one's wanting to, it used to be, hey, we fight for this job. Now it's nah, I'll just take my chances elsewhere.
Well, and he's not adapting, right? He's still thinking this is the 90s where he's just this gunslinger and, what he said, these risks or shots or whatever, that's not the way the NFL's ran anymore, man. Like, some thought and effort and analytics, and I'm not the biggest analytics guy, but you got to put some of it into it, right? You can't just taking a shot. I've done it before and it worked. Well, it's been like 30 years since that did work, Jerry. So adapt a little bit. I'm not saying like fully adapt everything analytical or anything, but like try a little. I feel like if you end up with shot, and this is no disrespect to him, right? Like, he could be one hell of a coach. We don't know what to expect.
Absolutely.
But at
Absolutely.
the same time, like, Jerry, did you even try?
So here's my thought. I think if he gets hired anywhere but Dallas, he probably does turn out to be a pretty decent head coach. But you're always going to have that looking over your shoulder, or you're going to be getting ready to go to your press conference after the game, and you're going to see Jerry standing outside your locker room talking to the media already, throwing you probably under the bus, throwing your team probably under the bus. So,
And
I mean,
let's be honest.
there's the added pressure to, like, okay, Andy retires, they hire Schottenheimer, right? He's probably going to have more success because the pressure's not going to be there from the ownership.
Well,
Like, yeah, the pressure's going to be there the more
you're gonna
pressure.
follow Andy. Like,
Yeah,
that was
but
a bad
still,
example.
I think you'd rather do that than sit there and have an owner who's going to sit there and just, after every single game, throw a microscope out there to everybody to see, and is not going to hold back saying, hey, our coaching could be better. Hey, our guys aren't ready. So it's like,
Well, and it's crazy that the rest of us can see this, right? Like, we're not Dallas fans by any stretch of the imagination, but like, they have a lot of top tier talent. Like,
yeah,
there's only one glaring issue in that organization, and like, everyone is, even like you said, the former players are seeing it. Like, you have talent, you can get coaches. Like, everything. There's one issue, and everyone can see it, but the issue. So I don't know. It's
and
got to be rough.
I would almost go back to last season. Like, if you knew you weren't probably going to keep McCarthy, you fire him and hire Dan Quinn immediately.
Yeah.
Like, you have that.
Or fire McCarthy that final like 8-game stretch or whatever. Give Schottenheimer a chance to see what it looks like under him. That way, if you do need to go out and actually swing for a Ben Johnson or swing for one of these coaches,
Yes.
it's for the future. And I don't know. I think that's the reason you see a lot of those like 6 to 8 week interim coaches, like, so you can see what kind of goes on.
I mean, I got Antonio Pierce a job. I mean, but I mean, that's no here nor there. I don't think he also didn't get really a fair deal or a fair shot here. Gerard Mayo, I don't think got a fair deal at this.
No.
And I'd love to see those two guys I'd love to see those two guys get hired again, just because I think if they're again, you hear us talk about it all the time. Ownership, GM, head coach matter. If your ownership's a clown show and a circus, chances are you're probably not going to be a very successful head coach, right?
Yeah, and the Cowboys kind of fall into that Lakers category. They're kind of just living off the name in the past and not really trying to do anything to become something presently. That's really all it boils down to. Like, that's just some of these teams living on their history, their past, and that's just not enough anymore. At one time, it probably was.
Yeah.
Right, but now that Cowboys are no bigger, smaller, like the name itself is, but like from a true product, they're nothing special anymore. And this
No, not America's team anymore. And I would really prefer if I quit hearing about people calling them, referring them to as America's team.
Yeah, because it's clearly the Chiefs, obviously.
Well, you're not going to hear me say that. But so before I pose a question of the new hires, I just want everyone to realize. So we used to always kind of poke fun at the Raiders just based on Andy Reid, Sean Payton, and Harbaugh, right? And then Antonio Pierce, which again, I love it. I think he's basically still a player, right? He's basically a player, but he could still be a head coach in the right situation. I think because those guys still played hard for him. Whether yes, we hate that we're not Raiders fans. We make it well known, but at the same time, we're smart and we realize just watch the games. He still had those guys playing, competing with little talent that they had on the offensive side of the ball, but the defense obviously showed improvements. Right, improvements. I use that word very, very lightly, but again, just watch the games, understand. So that's why I don't think they give him kind of a fair shot. But now you have Andy, Jim, Sean, Pete. I mean, bro, if there was one last hoorah for the old school guys,
It's,
homie,
it's
they're here in the AFC West, man.
yeah.
This is going to be absolutely awesome to watch
One
because these are guys that are all creative in their own way.
one. It's gonna make me sound kind of like a big-headed Chiefs fan, but I hope you guys can understand and hear the reality when I say this. But um, I think it's no surprise that the other three teams beside the Chiefs get these old school coaches because they want the challenge of taking on Patrick and the Chiefs. They like the competitive spirit that like some of these new softer coaches are like, no, we don't want to kind of start our career with that kind of gauntlet or challenge. So it's no surprise that this division has some of those old school because they're like Andy and the Chiefs, okay. Oh, Sean and the Broncos, fuck yeah. Oh, Harbaugh and the Chargers, sign me up. So it's like I'm not surprised that it's kind of
Gives you
got
a
that old.
competitive boner a little bit.
It does, and obviously I would prefer the Chiefs to win every game, win every Super Bowl, but at the end of the day, I'm still a sports fan, and just like the competitiveness that these four coaches should be able to bring within all these matchups, it's going to be really exciting. Uh, I mean, I don't think it's a question that it's the best division in football if you just look at head coaches.
So then, before we move on to our next topic, who shows improvements right away, year one of the opening positions?
Bears.
Yeah, see, I have a hard. I'm going back and forth between three teams because I still love Rabel with the Patriots, and obviously it's the Bills division, but the other teams are beatable, right? Like I love Aaron Glenn, as you know, we grew up watching him and those guys, but it's still the Jets, and I still don't know if it's quite there, and I don't know what exactly the new head coach and GM are going to do with the roster, where they're going with the quarterback position. And then obviously the Dolphins, Tua, and just those guys. So Vrabel and the Patriots, he's got a quarterback. I love Josh McDaniels as a coordinator. He's one of those guys, not a head coach. He's a coordinator. He's built to be a coordinator. Second, I love the Jaguars. Liam Cohen is a good X's and O's guy. I think you had, and we talked obviously last night about it off here about you could be a good X's and O's guy, but how can you build your culture? So I think that could be holding back just a tad. But I love him with Trevor Lawrence, and then obviously the easy ones, Bears, right? Just based on Caleb Williams' skill position, what they have on defense, and who they have roster wise. They probably do have the best roster of all the openings that are filled. Do you think hiring Ben Johnson? Do you think that gives them how close to the division, or do you think they're just like a wild card at first?
Just I know it's the easy choice, but at the same time, Ben Johnson's just been marinating in a culture that he was part of, like establishing. I think that's going to be a huge benefit because the Bears, even though they're talented, they need a kind of refresher too from like a locker room and just like a whole just feeling. So I think that benefits obviously the X's and O's, what the Bears have to work with offensively. Um, no disrespect to Jared Goff, and I know that offense was loaded, but the Bears kind of have talent too. So I just, if Ben Johnson's able to make Jared Goff an MVP candidate, I have no reason to believe that Caleb Williams can't be. Plain and simple. They already have a really good defense. I don't think they're still talented enough to compete with the Lions for the division right away, but there's no reason they can't be right up there with the Vikings and Packers from a competitive standpoint. I wouldn't be surprised if they are a wild card team. I still don't think not Lions still have a lot of talent, and they're going to get more talented when healthy, but I think they're easily a wild card team.
Yeah, I think this is going to be the first big test for Dan Campbell in his coaching career. I mean, a sign of respect is your coordinator's getting hired, right? That's just a good program. Now the tough part is, and this is where a lot of coaches kind of, this is where they start losing jobs, because now you got to be able to create your own tree, and you got to be able to recycle. Like, you got to be able to bring in new guys. So I'm not going to say that he can't do it. I do think it hurts their offense just a tad, even though they did bring in Denver's passing game specialists as their OC. That's nothing to get excited about, honestly. You know, cool, but at the same time, it's like he didn't really have much of it. That's Sean's offense, right? Like, is he going to bring the same stuff? Probably not. The terms may be the same or dumbed down, but that's still a big risk, right? And then you hire in-house for your D coordinator spot. Dude, I don't think it's going to be too. I mean, we were a year out with the Redskins or the Commanders. Sorry, I don't know if we're that far off with the Bears right now. You don't know what the Vikings are going to be. Stefanski's or O'Connell's still a good coach. Kevin O'Connell's still a good coach. Yeah, I think it's going to be a tight. I think that whole division is going to be right there, and it'll make for a fun season. But I mean, I think of those teams that hiring, I think you're going to see the biggest jump, and I think you're going to see it right away. And I think Caleb Williams is a competitive enough person that he's just going to soak this in. Like, last year was not fun for him. You could tell. But that doesn't erase the fact that you're still going to need to piece together your offensive line a little better. You're going to have to make sure that you get protection for your quarterback. Now's the tough part of, can you beat that out of his head of, you don't have to scramble and you don't have to do these silly plays.
Yeah, and you can say what you want about Caleb Williams, painting his fingernails, crying on his mom's shoulder. What you can say whatever you want, but I don't think the one thing you can really deny, if you're being honest with yourself, is the dude is competitive. The dude does want to win. Now, I'm don't know if we saw enough to think he's a franchise quarterback or not, but he is competitive enough to. I guarantee he's already spent 72 hours straight looking over plays and verbiage and everything from Ben Johnson. Like,
Homie probably hasn't slept much. He's been so probably fucking excited.
Yeah, exactly. And like, this isn't me saying he is going to be a franchise quarterback or not, but I guarantee you he's competitive enough to where I do think it's going to be a good marriage. I would be giddy if I was a Bears fan, right? Like, shit's been bleak for a while. You draft Caleb, you think it's going to be an immediate turnaround.
You actually got the coach you wanted. Like, that's all we heard was Bear fans. Like, if Ben Johnson or bust, bro, like, we don't want any of these fucking other guys. Get them the fuck out of here. Like, it's Ben Johnson or we riot.
Right. And well, and they kind of thought they were going to be playoff bound the moment they drafted Caleb, and like it doesn't always work that way. I know you had to watch Bo Nix and Jaden Daniels kind of go off, but at the same time, like, the Bears with the bad coaching staff and a rookie quarterback, they were still really competitive. I mean, think about it. That stupid Hail Mary, the little mismanagement of time,
the blocked field goal in Green Bay.
Blocked field. You were that close to having just a few more wins. So to go out and nail your hire, and again, none of us know if Ben Johnson is a good coach. X's and O's probably still going to look really good, but there's more to it than just calling plays, right? Like, yes, like, Andy Reid's an offensive mastermind, but for decades now, we've heard how he's just such a player's coach. That's always the first thing said, not the plays he draws up, it's being a player's coach. So more goes into it than play calling and designing plays, which none of us really know how any of these coaches are going to do. But from like just the X's and O's standpoint, like, their offense alone should just be better. His clock management can still be worse than Eberflus. We haven't seen that. We haven't seen it before, though, right?
Yeah.
We'd like to think it wouldn't be like
absolutely.
So like all those intangibles we still don't know of, but just X's and O's. Ben Johnson, Caleb Williams, it is a perfect marriage on paper. Like, perfect. It's the Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes connection. Maybe not that level, but you got your offensive-minded guru.
But that's what it's building towards, right? Yes. That's what everyone's kind of hoping for. So transitioning. So we talked about coaches openings and coaches. We're going to get into the NFL honors finalist. That is next Thursday. So what we're going to do is we're going to start the coach of the year, and we're going to go all the way through the finalists, and we're going to kind of give our picks. I remember some of our picks preseason. So I know we're going to start with coach of the year. Neither one of us have our coach of the year on here
Nope.
as a finalist.
McDonald's not up.
I went D'Amico Ryans. You obviously went Mike McDonald from Seattle. That's right. So
It
your
was looking
finalists are Dan.
promising for a little bit.
It did. It started out really well. So your finalists are Dan Campbell, Kevin O'Connell, Sean Payton, Dan Quinn, Andy Reid.
I think you take out Andy and Dan Campbell aren't going to win it. I think they did what was expected. It's not to say those aren't great coaches, by the way. Obviously they
Right.
are. I lean towards O'Connell because I think they extremely exceeded expectations with Sam Darnold, which is also why Sean Payton and Dan Quinn could win it because they also, taking some rookie quarterbacks and whatnot and making the playoffs. But for me, I think O'Connell gets it because I think especially once McCarthy got hurt, they really thought they were screwed.
Oh yeah.
Part of me also wants to go Denver just because a team who's projected before the season like 4 wins makes the postseason. I don't know. That's a tough one for me. Honestly, all 5 could win it, but I still think O'Connell barely nudging out Sean Payton.
Yeah, I don't think Sean's going to be close. I lean Dan Quinn just based on. I mean, we talked about it all offseason how excited we were for Dan Quinn. We're Dan Quinn guys. We love Coach Quinn, and then to see what they were. We said 1 to 2 years. They went out this year and won 12 games. So to do that with a rookie quarterback, well ahead of schedule. I think it's Dan Quinn or Kevin O'Connell. Unfortunately, I think the Vikings kind of showed their true colors the last few weeks of the season. That's not fair for Kevin O'Connell, though. That's a good majority of the season. They played really, really well. You can't control who's on your schedule and who you play. So they did what they were supposed to do. It's just kind of towards the back end of the seasons when they kind of let up a little bit. So I'm leaning Kevin O'Connell, Dan Quinn. My pick would be Dan Quinn, just based on situation and where they were at as far as like wins and rookie quarterback who looked like a 10-year vet.
Even in their fucking massive defeat, he still looked solid. So
be happy, be excited, Washington fans. Like, you guys are going to be back. I promise you guys are going to be back.
Clearly don't want to get too in depth, but like that game wasn't because Jaden Daniels looked like he was scared or not ready for the moment. So won't go in too much detail, but like Jaden Daniels might be the real deal. The show.
Yeah, absolutely. True story. So we're going to go assistant. So the assistant, like you're basically your coordinators.
Bags.
So hang on. Joe Brady, Vic Fangio, Brian Flores, Aaron Glenn, Ben Johnson.
Boo.
Boo.
I'm going to go Vic.
I absolutely agree.
I don't know. We don't follow the Eagles a lot, but we know that their defense didn't start off too hot. But you have a guy like Vic who figured it out. And once he figured it out, that defense has been just, I don't even know if dominant is the right word. But that defense has been number one basically across the board since he's made some adjustments and kind of figured it out. So no shock that I think he was, I guess Flores was a defensive guy too. I was like, shocker that I picked the one defensive guy listed, but
there's three defensive guys, 2 offense.
Who was the third defensive guy?
Aaron Glenn.
Oh yeah, no. And it's not his fault. He a lot of injuries, right? And I don't know how a dude whose defense probably finished like bottom half of the league is up for this, but Flores again, I could see just because I think that defense exceeded expectations. I mean, Van Ginkel played like a defensive player of the year in his system. Joe Brady, I like Joe Brady offensively more than Ben Johnson because everyone thought this was going to kind of be like a step back year for the
Yep.
Bills,
Yep.
and it was not. I remember Josh Allen's interview, and they asked him about Joe Brady. He was like, "He sucks. He's
Yeah, he's
terrible."
not. He doesn't bring anything to us.
And that shows you how much he does value Joe Brady. So, I'm still going to lean Vic. We've always kind of liked Vic, specifically as a coordinator. And the job he did with that defense, I mean, it's a huge reason they're playing in the Super Bowl in a couple of weeks. So I actually think this one was kind of easy.
Yeah, and I'll just say it now. I loved Vic Fangio when he was with Denver. I just wish he would have got if he gets the offensive coordinator correct, he's fine. There's nothing about him that he didn't do well in Denver. The players still loved him while he was in Denver. It's just the offense was shit. And then when it came down to him having to select between Drew Lock and Teddy Bridgewater, he would handle that as poorly as you could possibly handle it. So no hatred for Vic. I love Vic and what he was able to do. I think it's Vic or Ben, one of those two guys. But again, I'm with you. I'm leaning with Vic and that defense. So let's move to Offensive Rookie of the Year. Plus note of this is both of the guys that we picked preseason are finalists. I obviously picked Bo Nix, and you picked Brian Thomas. So, boom. So you have Brock Bowers, Jaden Daniels, Malik Neighbors, Bo Nix, Brian Thomas Jr. I'm still obviously going to say Bo.
Yeah, and I mean, I didn't even expect the great season that Brian Thomas had, but that dude kind of blew up.
Well, we both made it very clear when we were picking it that the easy way was Jaden Daniels. We knew it was probably going to be Jaden Daniels, and we both said that's the easy route. We didn't want to go that route, so we went with different people.
Well, and that's almost exactly what I'm going to say here. It's going to be Jaden Daniels, plain and simple.
Yep.
I do, however, just to not pick the easy choice or the quarterback, Brock Bowers, literally a record-setting year for him. And he did that with defenses really just only keying on him, having no quarterback play. I don't know.
Well, let's be honest with all three of these non-quarterbacks, so Bowers, Neighbors, Thomas, they could all easily. I mean, look what Malik Neighbors had to deal with all season, right? Even Brian Thomas, look what he had to deal with all season. And then obviously, none of those three guys had consistent quarterback play.
Now, yeah, and we all know Daniels is going to win it.
Yes.
But this is the first award where I'm like, all five wholeheartedly deserve it.
Yes.
And either way, that is five really good young players to get excited about if you're a fan of any of them. Daniels will win it. If he doesn't, I would be really surprised. But it's five really good rookies, and nobody would be truly surprised if any of their names were called. They all have a really good case. I just think it's a quarterback league, and one of them happened to take their team to a championship game.
Yeah, those three guys had too good of a season to not even make as a finalist. I mean, that's kind of disrespectful if they wouldn't have been finalists just based on what their numbers look like. And Bauer's setting records, not just rookie records, but tight end records. So, just saying.
Yeah, nope. I mean, I look at that award and it's going to be a shame that only one of them can win it. But either way, if you're a fan of any five of those teams, you got a really good one for a long time at whatever position they are. So that's kind of the big picture of it is a lot of good young talent out of the draft this last year.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we both know who it's going to be, so that's why we got to go Jaden Daniels. But at the same time, just for fun, Bo Nix and then Brian Thomas were our preseason picks, so that'd be kind of cool to see that. Defensive Player of the Year, you picked Myles Garrett before season. I picked Fred Warner. Myles Garrett's a finalist. Fred Warner's not, but Fred Warner also played on a broken ankle all season, so
he should get the award just for that.
Exactly.
Given how tough the league is this anymore, that alone. MVP.
Exactly. So your finalists for Defensive Player of the Year: Zach Bond, Myles Garrett, Trey Hendrickson, Pat Surtain, T.J. Watt. We already know where I'm going.
That's wild that Kirby Joseph isn't up.
Give me PS2 all day, every day.
Yeah, I don't even think he's if we're being honest and we're taking hatred of people out, give me Trey Hendrickson. PS2 probably will win it. No idea why, but he probably
Look at
will.
his numbers against the top receivers, man. It's very similar to the year that Stephon Gilmore when old Gilmore won, and it was just a tad bit better than what Gilmore had the year he won Defensive Player of the Year. So I mean, at least if he wins it, he's earned it.
Yeah, no, this is another one where I think all of them have a really good case. I don't know. Like I would love to have PS2 on the Chiefs, obviously. Like he is a way better corner than Sauce, and that's always kind of been the debate. I don't even know how it's a debate, but it is what it is. But it's one of those where I don't know. Didn't Hendrickson have like 18 sacks on the year?
Yeah, I think he did end up leading the NFL.
So I don't know. I like PS2 had a really good year, but I don't know if I guess I don't know what like the stats they look at that are like, oh, those numbers as a corner is comparable to like 18 sack. You know what I mean? So like,
Right.
I'm not saying he doesn't deserve it. I don't know what the statistical comparison for corner to pass rusher is. That's a harder comparison than like rushing yards to receiving yards or
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know that comparison. Yeah, all of them deserve it.
Yeah. I'm going PS2, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was like Trey Hendrickson or even like Myles Garrett, just based on who it is, right? I mean, it could be one of those. So let's move to the Defensive Rookie of the Year. This one's, I'm not sure. I mean, you have Cooper DeJean, Braden Fisk, Quinyon Mitchell, who we were very high on our pre-draft episode. We really liked him. Chop Robinson, Jared Verse. I'm going Jared Verse.
Yeah, I was waiting for his name.
Yeah, we've talked, and he was absolutely number one on the steal list. Like, if Denver wasn't in the QB market and we didn't, at the same time, if Denver decided not to go Bo Nix and they would have drafted Jared Verse and then maybe went quarterback later in the draft, this was. I don't think this is actually as hard as some may make it seem. I think it is Jared Verse.
You have an argument of like a Cooper DeJean, just given that he was kind of that vocal point of that turnaround I talked about earlier for Vic and his defense. I don't know if they consider just everything he does, like return game and everything on special teams, into this. I think you have a good argument for him, though. He kind of was that catalyst for the turnaround. But I'm going to use the same one that I did for the defense. I don't know the statistical comparisons of what we're looking for here. I do know when watching Rams games, Jared Verse was an absolute monster.
Yeah, dude. Fuck.
Whether he was getting the statistics, because it's hard for D linemen. Like people
It's
see
one of
sacks,
those,
right? Like, but
you
what
look at
about
the sacks, but then you look in pressures. Yeah, like you see, he was blowing plays up.
Yeah, so I would clearly I have a type. I'm leaning towards like edge rushers and stuff on this, but I do think it's a two-man race. No disrespect to the others, but I think it's Jared Verse or Cooper DeJean.
Yep.
Cooper DeJean, I don't know if he's going to have any kind of numbers to back it up, but his energy and effort and kind of just flying around the field, the impact he had was probably bigger than any of them. So, two-man race, but I still think it's Versus for sure.
Yeah, but also we're not going to neglect the fact that there's two Eagles on this list, right? So that just goes to show what this defense has been able to do this year with two rookies.
Rams too?
Yes.
Yeah.
But I mean, Rams kind of got hot there at the end of the season.
They got healthy.
Again, they were kind of the Bengals, but a couple games better, right? Like they didn't start the season off like the Bengals did. I'm gonna skip the MVP. We're gonna make the MVP one last, so we're gonna go next to the comeback player of the year. Joe Burrow, Sam Darnold, J.K. Dobbins, Christian Gonzalez, and DeMar Hamlin. I picked Joe Burrow as my MVP, so I'm picking him as the comeback player of the year.
You said one, I already forgot.
Darnold, Dobbins, Gonzalez, Hamlin.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Darnold. Look, we all know Joe Burrow's really good. Like, what he did this year surprises no one. Like, he just stayed healthy.
That's true.
What Sam Darnold did, and I know he choked literally only against two teams, but it happened to be 4 times. between them, but the dude didn't just come back from last year. Like, that dude came back from literally a terrible career before this.
Yeah.
And the Hamlin story, like, that's really cool. I think he's going to end up winning it just because his is a little more than just football.
Yep.
He died on a field, for crying out loud. And honestly, I didn't think he was a really good safety before the injury, but I was wrong, because he's actually not that bad of a football player either.
Right.
So I think it's going to go to him, because these others are coming back from just like I don't want to say a not serious injury, like every injury's serious, but this guy died on a football field, and he's back out here playing football. I think he wins it, but story aside, it would be Sam Darnold for me. Just, the dude was a castaway at this point, right? Like, they signed him as a little bit of insurance
Yeah.
for McCarthy.
1 year, $10 million deal.
Yeah,
Like,
have kind of an experienced guy. Like, he was in Shanahan's system as a backup, just kind of picking up that lingo, and then didn't think he was going to start at all this year, and then he comes out and, again, kind of Sam Darnold of old down the stretch, but can't take away from the whole picture that he put up normal MVP numbers in a typical year, or close to. So,
right.
Dobbins, like, he came back and had a good year. I don't think it was anything like special. Like, happy to see him healthy. Christian Gonzalez, I got to be honest, didn't watch enough Patriot. I know he's a good corner, but like, I can't in a full scope say what he did on the year. Like, good to have him back, but that's kind of my breakdown of all of Joe Burrow. But Joe Burrow, like, that's what Joe Burrow's going to do in a year he stays healthy. Let's be honest. So, like, yeah, he came back from an injury, but he came back and did exactly what he did
Beforehand. Yeah.
So, not taking anything away from him, but like, Darnold just looking good finally. And then, it's Damar Hamlin's, like, that whole story. Like, he came back from more than just like a broken wrist, a torn ACL.
Yeah.
So I think it's his to win.
Moving on to the offensive player of the year. Weirdly enough, Josh Allen's not on here, but he's obviously an MVP finalist. But you have Saquon Barkley, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson. It's got to be Henry or Barkley, right? Like, or is this going to be just another maybe off-brand MVP that they give to Burrow or Jackson?
I know
I'm going Barkley.
Everyone's going to be surprised by my answer here, especially if you've ever listened to any of our shows previously. To me, it's Jamar Chase. Dude had like 1,800 yards and 20 touchdowns. I don't like what Saquon did was special. I agree. Like, it's going to be hard to not give Saquon any award, but to me, it's offensive player. This is just offensive player, like, not most valuable to the team. None of that. Strictly from an offensive player, it's Jamar Chase, because I'd be okay facing any of those other dudes, but Jamar Chase, for whatever reason, even when you know it's going to him, you can't stop it. I know they had a quote unquote down year, but I don't know his exact numbers, but I think he had like 1,800 yards, 20 touchdowns, shit ton of catches. Like, so to me, it's equivalent to what Barkley did, but I give the slight edge to Jamar.
I'd say they're giving it to Saquon to say, "Hey, we fucked up and didn't give you the MVP, but here's kind of a nod, right? Like, hey, we still know what you did, but we're just not willing to give you the MVP, but we'll give you this instead." So I'm going Saquon. I think anytime you get a 2,000-yard running back, just what he's been able to do, that's going to probably do it. I mean, it wouldn't be surprising if they said the same thing for Lamar, like Josh Allen wins the MVP, but hey, Lamar, we still recognize what you did. Here's what we're doing. So let's go. Let's end it. Let's end our finalists list with MVP candidates: Josh Allen, Saquon, Burrow, Goff, Lamar. I'll let you go first.
It's wild to me that my boy George Karlaftis isn't on this list. That's wild. Talk about snubs.
Stop it.
Snubs. See, this is it's going to be weird because I didn't pick him for offensive player. Did you say Saquon? I hope you said
I did
Saquon.
say Saquon for the offensive player of the year.
No, for MVP.
No, not for MVP.
Homie's not even listed as a finalist.
Oh yes, I thought you were asking if that's who I picked. He is
Uh-uh.
it's Josh Allen, Saquon Barkley, Joe Burrow, Jared Goff, and Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, I mean, I th- I think it's going to go to Lamar. It should go to Saquon. Um, it's kind of why I didn't pick him for Offensive Player of the Year, because I think he should get the MVP. It's a quarterback award. Let's be honest. One of the quarterbacks is going to win it. But we had a 2,000-yard rusher. There's really no other explanation needed. What these quarterbacks did were great years, but none of them were historic. Saquon's the ninth running back to have a 2,000-yard season? Like, this
Yep.
hasn't even. You can literally count on your hands the amount of running backs that have done what Saquon did this year.
And he
There's
probably would have
no
got
other.
the record if they hadn't already clinched it up and Sirianni was actually smart and said, "No, you're not playing, bro."
Right, and like bigger aspirations, I get that. But like, this was the ninth time we've ever seen 2,000 yards. There's no. All these quarterbacks did have great years, none of them record breaking. We've seen some of these quarterback seasons before from Lamar, from Josh. Each one have done it themselves. There's no other argument than it was just a historic season from Saquon. The end.
Yeah, I think any other year Joe Burrow probably does win it if they make the playoffs, but since they didn't make the playoffs, sorry, bro. I agree with you on Saquon. I do think it's going to be Lamar again.
I
I know
agree.
everyone's wanting it to be Josh Allen just because, well, he hasn't gotten one or Lamar's won already, and cool. But let's be honest, Lamar had a pretty damn good year, one of his better ones, and I think that's the Derrick Henry effect too. I think that helped a lot. Um, Mark Andrews kind of cost Lamar his chance, which is not fair. It's not fair because Mark Andrews is still a damn good player. Um,
Lamar had a couple turnovers too. Like,
exactly.
I
So
know
it's
in the
just,
crunch time it was Mark making the mistakes, but like Lamar still had a couple turnovers too.
yeah. And at the end of the day, I still think Lamar had a dang good season as far as his, between throwing the football, it's probably one of his better years throwing the football.
Absolutely.
He obviously still has his rushing stats and touchdowns to go along with it. Cool, Josh Allen. I know you did more than what was expected, right? With what he had, because
With left. Yeah.
even we talked before the season, like, I don't know who he's going to be throwing the football to. Keon Coleman's pretty cool, but Stephon Diggs and those guys. I mean, that's still, losing Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis and replacing with Curtis Samuel, Keon Coleman, and I don't give a fuck what anyone says. No one expected Shakir to come out and do what he did. Yes,
Or
we
Matt
knew
Collins.
or Mac Hollins, exactly. And yes, Shakir's a good receiver, and he had some good plays for him last year, but no
He's
one
not an
thought,
alpha. He's not an
yeah,
alpha.
bro, no. And I'll fight anybody. Like, I'll fight anybody who tries to say otherwise, unless you show me proof that you picked him before the season that he was going to be what he did this year. Cool, but I'm not buying it. So, again, I would love to see Josh Allen get it. I mean, I know aside from what, Bills Chiefs rivalry, we like Josh Allen here. We will never say anything bad about Josh Allen, even though we're getting ready to do a tad bit of a breakdown of the Bills game and Chiefs game. Final answer, you going Lamar?
I think it's Lamar. That's who my money would go to, but me personally, it should go Saquon.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm going to go Lamar too. It sucks because, I mean, as cool as it'd be to see Josh, or Saquon at that rate. It is what it is at this point. I would be surprised if it was Saquon, honestly, just because we know how this award usually goes. Not saying we would complain if it does end up being him, but again, I don't know. We're not going to get into a full deep dive of the Super Bowl. That's next week. But I do want to kind of check in with the Chiefs-Bills game. Chiefs pull it out, 32-29. Honestly, it was a fun game. It really was. They're sloppy at times, but that happens. So I talked at length last week about Buffalo's got to run the football. They finished with 32 carries, 147. Cook 13 for 85, Josh Allen 11 for 39, but he still threw the ball 34 times, and I still think they left a lot out there in the run game.
No, I agree. The way Cook looked, it should have had way more than 13 carries. And I think it was their first possession in the second half where they came out just running it down our throats. That's when I was like, oh boy, we're in trouble. And then
they made the correct adjustment.
Yeah, and then the end. No, I agree. I don't even think they just left a little out there. Like they left we couldn't stop James Cook.
I think they should have they should have gotten the 40s like they did against Denver, and even what they were able to do against Baltimore. Like, you got to stick with it. I think what hurts, and I'll go ahead and let you finish first before I kind of take a dive in.
No, I that's just, they did a lot of quarterback sneaks with Josh Allen that even the first few where they kind of got it closely, like Chiefs obviously had the correct scouting report. I think on a lot of those short yardage ones, they should have just given it to Cook. We could probably go look at all 13 of Cook's runs, and most, if not all, he wasn't getting touched for minimum 3 or 4 yards. I think this was an example of a team was wanting their quarterback to kind of match Patrick in his heroics. Albeit, look, Josh Allen, more than capable of putting the cape on, but like, do what's working. And James Cook was working. And for him to only finish with 13 carries is, I think that's a 98% of the reason they ended up losing, was his lack of touches.
Yeah, I'm not questioning the short yardage, go for it on the 4th downs. That is the right move.
There's play call repeatedly, though.
Yeah, there's 2 things here. Don't chase points.
That's
right?
A big one. Yep. We mentioned that, didn't we?
It did, and during the game, like, it's the third quarter, man. Like, just kick a field goal, keep it good. Trust your defense is playing pretty damn good, right? They're keeping you in it. Like, you don't need to point chase that early, because then you put yourself in kind of a fucked up situation later on in the game. So you shit the bed twice on 2-point conversions. There's 4 points. Your kicker shanks a field goal. There's another, right? So now the points are kind of adding up, so you don't fuck up the 2-point conversions, the 2-point conversions, and that field goal is not as detrimental, right? That's, it balances itself out, but now you're adding to those missed 2-point conversions. Secondly, the Dollar General tush push, whatever you want to call it, that's not it, right? I like the speed option out of that play that they did earlier. Oh, I think it was actually at the goal. I think that's when they got a touchdown. You got to have more stuff like that on 4th down, because Josh isn't doing it, not against the Chiefs front, which is going to be fun to see in, with the Eagles and how they handle that, because that is a team who can do the tush push a little more fundamentally sound. And that's not to say the Chiefs can't stop that, but we'll worry about that next week. So there's 2 things, obviously the extra points and the 2-point conversion, point chasing, and then not making the correct adjustments on 4th down. Unfortunately, I think this was their best chance. I'm not saying their window's closed, but I'm saying this was their best chance of doing it, because I don't think the Chiefs are going to be this bad's not the correct term, but I don't think the Chiefs are going to be as weak, right? Like, this was supposed to be the year that they could get him, because the Chiefs, they weren't as strong offensively. The Chiefs weren't strong offensively this game, let's be honest with you, right? Like, their running game wasn't very good outside of Patrick was their offense, right? Yes, he had the good throws to Juju. Xavier Worthy was fucking out of nowhere. Well, not really necessarily out of nowhere, but Pat's legs is kind of what won the game. So, again, it's not that I think the Bills' window is closing. I just don't think the Chiefs are going to be this bad, air quotes, per se. I think the Chiefs are just going to keep getting better.
Well, I think underwhelming might be a better word.
There you go. That's that's a good word.
Kind of just nonchalant. Their offense seemed right. And I agree. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen with, like, Hollywood Brown or Rashee Rice. Like, are we going to keep Brown? Is Rice going to come back healthy and not suspended? Travis. I mean, there are question marks, but I agree. There's so many things you could say about this game, but think from just a large scope. It was two heavyweights just throwing haymakers, and the other ones responding. A couple missed ones here, and who could capitalize on it? Yeah, like you said, like we enjoy Josh Allen and the Bills. Truth be told, I think I've even mentioned on an episode, like if the Chiefs didn't win the Super Bowl, I would be pulling for Josh Allen and the Bills to win one. I just enjoy a good football game. All the people who are miserable blaming other things for whatever reasons, that's their right. But even if the Bills win, I would have just been, kudos to the Bills, and I would have been rooting for them. So, but from like the actual game, like you were saying, I agree on that speed option, read option that they ran. They definitely needed more plays like that, because even if you go back and watch, it was really well defended, but it was such a good play that it worked.
Exactly.
That's kind of what you're talking about. Like, don't get up and just let the other team know what you're doing, because it can be stopped. Get some of that misdirection. Like, Chiefs defended that option fantastic, probably better than most of the defenses, but it still worked because it was a really good play call. But I agree. I think we mentioned going into that game, the things the Bills couldn't do was point chase. I do think that's the biggest thing that cost them, honestly.
And it sucks because that was going to be James Cook's like big moment, right? Like they had that option read so well, but he did everything. It was almost like that Jeremiah Love in their semifinal game where that was like a 2-yard loss, and he just fucking willed himself into the end zone. James Cook did the exact same thing and took a nice back shot, right? Like he just got crushed right in the back in the rib area, and still scored. They win that game. That's a huge moment for him. That's a memory, right? Now no one's going to remember this just based on you didn't finish the game out, and it's not on him. There's not one person it's on. They didn't have any stupid, silly turnovers or anything like that.
And I want to point something out that it kind of will go with what you just said, kind of things no one really remembers or will remember. But one of your things, kind of whenever we do anything or whatnot, is like setting the tone. I actually think the Bills, when they came out, they didn't set a good tone for themselves. Like they had to kind of come uphill, because they came out, I don't know if people remember, but it was a really quick 3-and-out with almost 2 interceptions.
Yeah, run, pass.
Yeah. And 2 passes that should have been intercepted.
Yep.
They didn't set a very good tone, and I actually think that played a huge part. That kind of got them out of there. I think that's why they kind of leaned on Josh a little bit more than expected, because they didn't set a good tone. If they would have came out to start the game the way they did their first possession after halftime, I think you're looking at a completely different ball game.
Yes, absolutely.
And I know not a lot of people are going to go back and be like, first possession of the game. And I'm like, that matters more than you think. It establishes or doesn't establish a rhythm. It sets the tone. And in this case, it set a really bad tone.
Yep.
And I think that kind of hit him in a little bit of a downfall for a little bit. So it's the make or break. I mean, it's the AFC Championship game, right? Like, both teams are really good. Both teams made plays. Both teams left some plays out there. I think at the end of the day, it was just a really good football game. I hope it's the Chiefs Bills again next year. I think. Well, I know, since other fans out there, but if you can just look past everyone else just kind of blaming anything other than just watching a really good football game, like if those people could just enjoy what these matchups have brought, regular season and postseason, right? And just realize that it's 2 really good teams, 2 really good coaches, 2 really good quarterbacks that they deliver us classics, and I think we should just do a better job of appreciating it and enjoying them.
No, you absolutely, yeah, absolutely. You nailed it right there. So that's going to do it for today. But I do want to make note, next week has a chance to be epic with, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get everybody on who keeps messaging me. I've had a couple more since we started the episode about wanting to jump on and do episodes. I do know the one we for sure have locked up next week at our normal time, Wednesday, Smashed Up Fantasy Sports. These guys are fucking awesome. Just find them on Instagram, and you can also kind of peep what they're about. It's not your typical fantasy football or fantasy sports in general. So this is something we've been working on for a few weeks, trying to get them on. We finally found kind of middle ground as far as scheduling goes for that. He'll also talk about the Super Bowl. He said he wanted to talk about the Super Bowl as well. They may have a special going on for their fantasy league for the Super Bowl. So we're excited to hear about that. There's a Chiefs podcast that he's in Vegas. He's wanting to work out a time. We're trying to get that kind of niche together. There's another popular one. I see your messages, guys, and we're gonna work on it. Unfortunately, I don't know if we're gonna be able to record 5 nights a week next week. That's too much. But if we have to, and it's fun and we enjoy it, we'll see what we can do. But come find us on Instagram at Shovick Sports. Find us on Apple, Spotify, and iHeart. Thank you to all of our new followers, and we know we have a ton of new listeners. We appreciate all of you guys. So come find us, interact with us. It's actually been a fun month of January as far as getting new followers and interactions with a lot of new people. This is fun. We never dreamed in a million years that it would be like this now when we first started this almost a year ago, to the day, actually, when we were getting ready to talk about championship weekend. So again, thank you all. We're excited about the show next week, so make sure you guys tune in. We'll see you then.